This just in, Casey Hendrickson from 95.3 MNC, the most powerful show in the state of Indiana, has finally responded to allegations of stolen valor from both myself and Real News Michiana's Clifton French. Stay tuned.
I don't know. Do I address it? Do I? Okay, so here's the deal.
All right, I'm going to stop him right there because the entire premise of his response is already bullshit. You got to watch this guy. He's kind of slippery. That's what happens when you have people that get paid to talk for a living. Okay, so check this out. This is the thumbnail that he created prior to going live with this video. And by the way, look at the title of the video. The title of the video is about his response to Clifton French and me. Okay, the thumbnail literally has a picture of Clifton French in it. Okay, so he already creates this, starts going live. 2 hours and 50 minutes pass, and then he decides to pretend like he's organically responding to us, when in fact it was planned out all along. This guy is a bullshit artist. I'm going to call it out as I see it.
And the main reason that I'm doing this is because veterans are being attacked by some feeble-minded idiots who are dishonest and liars. But also innocent people who have defended me are being attacked because, again, that's what bullies do.
Here we go. Line number 2. Veterans are being attacked. Really? Veterans are being attacked? No, Casey. This is what happened. Now, Casey glossed over this one really fast because he didn't want to explain it, because when you get into the details, he sounds kind of dopey. Okay? So this is what happened. On Thanksgiving, Casey did a podcast with this group called the Common Veterans. They're actually a pretty good group. I looked into them. They're into some good causes. They're with some nonprofits, and they help out veterans. And I got respect for these guys. Unfortunately, I think they're being conned by Casey. But I digress. What happened was Clifton French wrote this story about Casey's stolen valor claims. So before Clifton wrote that story, he actually wrote an email to the Common Veterans podcast group. And he just gave them a heads up. Hey, look, this guy that you're having on, he's not really a combat veteran. Everybody else on the podcast is a veteran. He's not one of you, really. But he's kind of pretending to be at times. That's what he said. The Common Veterans didn't like that. And they actually kind of threatened Clifton a little bit. This is what they said.
For one in particular listener of this show, there is no stolen valor on this show. We do not accept stolen valor. We do not accept our members being called out for stolen valor, because especially when said member has specifically said that he has no combat experience. We will not accept it, and we will not accept our members being called that as well. For those that emailed me about it, they can go jump off a cliff. And the one I'm calling out, I would just rather, Jake Paul your ass.
Huh. Now, why does everybody got to be a tough guy on the internet these days? I don't understand what that's about. But anyways, they got really defensive, really angry at Clifton French from Real News Michiana for giving him a courtesy heads up that this guy just keeps talking about, that he's got this combat experience, so to speak. We got a video of it. It was literally in Clifton's story that he wrote. Also, one more thing. Just because your group is called the Common Veterans doesn't mean you're the arbiter of free speech. If someone wants to call someone out for stolen valor, they have the right to do that. You don't get to tell people what they're allowed to say. Now, all Clifton did in his story was he just quoted what they said about him in that podcast. That's it. If you call that attacking someone, you are a very delicate individual. No wonder you never deployed.
So another false allegation was made against me over the holiday that I committed stolen valor, and that I claimed that I was deployed to Iraq, which is really weird because every year on 9/11, I open the show with where I was on 9/11, which is in 2001. That is before the invasion in 2003. And I talk about how I wasn't in the military at the time. So I don't know how I could have deployed to Iraq after I have told everybody hundreds of times that I didn't, and that I didn't deploy overseas, and that I didn't see combat. I did come close once in the 1990s under Bill Clinton, which again, I have said and stated thousands of times. You will find that Bill Clinton bombed Iraq. What you don't often find is how we were all put on alert to invade Iraq in 1998 when I was in. Most of my time in the military, which is unremarkable, and I again stated that countless times.
Okay, quick recap. So you said that on air that you never deployed or been a combat veteran hundreds, maybe thousands of times. But let's not forget, you've been on the air almost every day for the last 20 years. So on those hundreds of episodes where you said you did not deploy, correct, those times you did not commit stolen valor. However, on the episodes where you said you had experience and a history in Iraq due to your time in service, yes, that is stolen valor when you don't correct yourself and say on that specific episode that you didn't deploy. Now, every veteran that I showed that clip to all agreed with me and said that they thought Casey committed stolen valor. To a veteran, it sounds obvious when you say, I have a history, I have experience, I have an expertise in Iraq, but you never been there, and you never say that you never been there. Then you go on to say your unit had experience there. That sounds like stolen valor. And then he tries to play word games in other clips, but he talks about his expertise once again in the region, then talks about what his unit did in Iraq and in Afghanistan. Again, if you're doing that without mentioning in that episode that you never deployed, you're committing stolen valor. He knows he's committing stolen valor. He got busted, and that's why he's so angry. That's why he's dedicating all this time on his show to try to defend himself. Next.
Most of my time dealt with Bosnia, and I didn't deploy. I did do some training with units who did. I did train with international units who came into the United States. I did do some OPFOR stuff, not a lot. But in that time, you had Saddam Hussein firing missiles at our aircraft and paying terrorists to target Americans and trying to secure VX gas and also trying to secure nuclear material, all of which, of course, we were read in on. And when he tried to assassinate George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton put us on alert. What's interesting is that the episode that this person claims in that we made a claim that I deployed, you can listen to that episode. That claim was never made, which is probably why it never made it to the article. So a separate clip that was taken out of context about my time in the 1990s was posted instead, because he's a liar.
More lies. Right, real quick. So the video that Real News Michiana quoted, it was in the article. Okay, and it wasn't taken out of context because Casey himself proved that it wasn't taken out of context, because the video says that he has experience and he has a history in Iraq due to his time in service. He just told us that he's never been there. So it wasn't taken out of context. It was just a lie. That's what pathological liars do. They just keep lying. Pro tip, when you're in a hole, stop digging. He clearly says he did not deploy, but we have clips of him saying that he has experience and a history of being in Iraq with his unit. Now, if Casey never committed stolen valor, then how the hell does this clip exist?
Most of you are aware of my history with Iraq and, at a broader extent, my unit history, if you will. My unit history, if you will. I don't need to go into details about it. I think some of you who have listened for an extended period of time understand that when I'm talking about these two countries, I have a fairly decent grasp of what's going on, mostly because of my time in service.
Or this clip, which may not exactly be stolen valor, But it is a very clear example of him lying to his audience, as he says he has an expertise and a knowledge of an area that he's never even been to. How is that possible? Once again, he's just proving that he's full of shit.
When Benghazi happened, I wasn't just telling you what happened in the reports. I was able to give you my expertise that I would have been involved in in how that strategy would have played out if I were in the military, because I would have been, or at least people in my MOS would have been a part of that operation. So I can explain to you how it should have worked if the rescue actually went through. And again, I'm not trying to be a jerk about it. I'm simply explaining from a position of knowledge and experience that most of you are not going to have. I'm simply explaining from a position of knowledge and experience that most of you are not going to have.
For those of you that think I'm being too hard on Casey for calling him out, for pretending to be deployed and then not actually deploying, consider this. This is something that Casey regularly does to other veterans. He recently compared former vice president nominee Tim Walz to an actual traitor, Bo Bergdahl. He said that Bo Bergdahl, the traitor who deserted his unit, did more than Tim Walz because he deployed. He's done this to other veterans as well. So this is something that Casey commonly does to other veterans who've never deployed. So why does Casey get a free pass?
Nathan Phillips. Now, Nathan Phillips is the Native American drummer dude who I told you has a long history as an activist. And Nathan Phillips, we now have his military records. Nathan Phillips's timeline of him being a Vietnam veteran never really meshed. And now we have his original papers. He was a U.S. Marines, in U.S. Marine Corps from 1972 to 1976. He never left the United States. He never went to Vietnam. Okay, he was in the Marine Corps in the U.S. So a lot of the stuff that he has said, not true, and he's a perpetual liar. And that's who this guy is. So Politico says he has PTSD from his combat experience, which amounts to zero.
Then we have those fun times where Casey pretends to put himself in the same category as a combat veteran.
There are those of us who are veterans. There are those, like Len, again, former cop, veteran as well. You, veteran, work with law enforcement as a tactical trainer. Those people are going to be more adept at doing that. But what about, those out there who don't have that experience? They've got their license to carry, but they don't have the training. They don't have the experience. They've never been put in that sort of environment. Most of you know I'm a veteran. There's a lot of veterans who did. They perked up and they're like, hey, depending on how this thing goes, we might be willing to lend our services to the nation of Ukraine.
Finally, as you can see with your own eyes, Casey Hendrickson, at best, is an armchair quarterback who spends a lot of time criticizing other veterans, some who have deployed, unlike him, and some who have not deployed, just like him. Nevertheless, that doesn't stop him from enjoying a free meal every Veterans Day on you. He will totally let you thank him for his service. Watch for yourself.
Happy Veterans Day to my fellow veterans out there. If you happen to be in the Niles, Michigan area, the Prime Table Restaurant on 11th Street in Niles, veterans get a free dinner. Packed house this morning when I was out there for Veterans Day for breakfast.
Some of you may be saying after all this, hey, Ben, we realized that Casey misspoke a few times. But that video, man, that was a bit harsh. And to that, I'll tell you this. All I'm doing is treating Casey Hendrickson the same way he treats other veterans. If you have a problem with that, jump off a cliff or I'll Jake Paul your ass.